human being men. It was none of this funny talk about homosexuality. None of that was ever discussed among anybody. Imagine my shock when these flagrant degenerates decided that they were going to use the context of what so many homeboys did at that time to disgrace this man's name. I would start to hear more about the record that Guru had and was getting to know the artists that he was developing at the time. Incidentally, Black Jesus was the artist who introduced me to Guru. He was leaning more towards coming towards my label for me to produce him, and Guru was good with that. I was developing him, which was going well, but me and his manager/brother never really got along. It was always a problem. On a personal level, we were fine just to hang out, get high and chill or whatever, but when it came down to business, him and I didn't click at all. We had two different points of views, which is a shame because his brother was very talented and I wanted to develop him and blow him into a larger artist. It was a weird situation. There was another G that was involved that saw it my way. He urged, just let Solar do his thing. Once things started growing, I said, look man, after everything happens and you start making your money and you blow, I'm not really interested in who's handling all that for you. But right now, while I've got to do what I've got to do, I need you focused on what I need here. I can't constantly be distracted. Guru tried to talk to him too. Yo, fall back. Let Solar work with Jeezy. That's what we called Black Jesus back then. In fact, everybody tried to tell him to fall back a little before the relationship fractured, but it did. As that was happening, Guru and I were growing with our friendship, and our business was too, right along with it. That was probably the worst time to cause friction or be problematic. Otherwise, he would have been coming up with me and with Guru as opposed to growing apart from us. Me more importantly, as I and Guru started to progress, he started to look more at his own career. I told him, you've done great things with Jazzmatazz and with Gang Starr. There is no doubt about it. Despite the Gang Starr album, and then the owners coming together, I do think there was a feeling, at that point, that the magic had left. He and Premier weren't getting along like they used to back in the day. Guru had a lot of bad feelings about certain incidents that had happened and had led into this dark period of his life. One of them being the assassination attempt in January of 1999, after they finished and released the Moment of Truth album in late 1998. Guru's own Moment of Truth came out of a Queens studio in what the police called a robbery, but he saw it as attempted murder. During this incident, there were 3 individuals in ski masks, and 2 of them grabbed Guru. One held him down and beat him into submission, while he begged the gunman to spare his life. In Guru's mind, miraculously, some part of that gunman relented. They took a customized, expensive watch. Guru said the watch was a gift from Premier, gotten from a jeweler Guru, and possibly Premier, used. After the watch was stolen, it made it back to that same jeweler. Of course, Guru found out about it, and it made a horrible situation worse. Approximately around the same time, he was facing up to 15 years on his own assault charges that took place in Queens. He was then also going to trial in that case, which he eventually beat. Obviously, the culmination of these things during this period had a major effect on his mental well-being and drove to the bottle and various other negative behaviors. I wasn't there. I didn't see it. Even though he was a very good friend of mine, somebody who I liked and admired, I wasn't going to just blow smoke up his ass and agree with all his suspicions. If I don't know something, I don't know. I'll listen to what you've got to say and even hear the other side, and then maybe I'll have an opinion or not. Just listening to all of that was hair-raising. I didn't know whether it was true, so I tried not to have any feelings towards what he said about Premier one way or another. I tried to judge Guru and deal with him based on the man I saw for myself. And as far as that went, me and Premier were cool. We traveled together to different shows and never had violence or negative vibes. At the same time, I was never really close to him either. When we saw each other, we peaced, went to the bar where everybody hung out or smoked together. It was never anything less or anything more than that. As the album was getting closer to fruition, the whole Gang Starr situation started to come to a head, so to speak. Our relationship was, on the other hand, starting to grow. From the time that we met, and we were hanging out, partying in the clubs, and going around doing what real G's would do, on into me working with him and his artists. Guru was the source of many a wild and memorable adventure over those years. One of the first clubs we went to was Lotus, downtown, hanging out, and Ice-T was there with Coca. I had met Ice-T at one of the studios that Guru was using on 48th Street, and he was there doing a voiceover. We talked about me doing some beats and tracks for a project that he was working on. Then we saw him at the club, and that was the first time we hung out for a minute. He and the G King's son were there. He's a great G, and inspired an amazing time. One of the first times Guru and I hung out, people understood. They got it. Guru and Solar, they're a good team. It's like a buddy movie, a lot of laughs, a lot of fun, people dug it. And when Guru was with me, he didn't drink as much, because I didn't drink. So, the drinking began being kept to a minimum. And then there came a time when stopped completely, which people were astonished and couldn't have been happier to see Guru off the booze. And I can't tell you how many people came to me and thanked me for encouraging that. Some of them thanked me for saving his life, including his mother and father. The talk was, with the drinking, he was headed in a direction where he was going to die. Before all of that, early on, and he was still drinking, but it wasn't crazy. After we hit a couple of parties, he used to roll with his artists, Jeezy or Crumb or somebody. Or we would hit the spots like the apt where Quest from the Roots used to DJ. That was like an underground joint down around what they used to call it the Meatpacking District. Back in the 2000s, it was nothing like it is now. Back then it was still kind of like grimy and low-key but real cool. We used to go to his parties, and there was always love. Whenever dudes would see Guru and me, they were always like peace, peace, always good times. About that time, I produced a song called I'm Sayin', which came out in 2003, and I directed a music video for that single also. That was a joint venture with my label at the time, Knocked Out Records, and Guru's label, Ill Kid Records. By then I was actively getting investors involved to put money behind artists, and Guru was seeing that I was stepping up. Even though it was a joint venture, I put up all the money at that time as the executive producer of the music video, the record, and the 12 LP. I was also putting little money here and there in the G's pockets, and Guru respected that. He said it many times that I was a doer. I was the type of G who stepped in to step up, not with my hand out asking all the time. I was doing. Plus, I had other projects I was working on equally, ones in Europe and the States, like music for media events and independent movies. This is something that Guru respected, and he knew I had talent and hoped that we could pull it together. At the same time, he had his artist, and by 2003, he hoped that there could be another shot for himself. He would look at his career differently once we started building together. He started seeing another chapter because Gang Starr had seemingly run its course. At that point, while he was doing the owners, the label wasn't going all out for this album. They weren't putting in the effort, and you could tell. I wasn't there for the other albums, but just understanding that when Daily Operation and Hard to Earn were being made, there was a lot of magic and certain energy and excitement around it that Guru would talk about. That certainly wasn't there during the making of the owners. These guys didn't do a lot of talking. The beat would be there, and Guru would do what he had to do, but their relationship had soured. That's why people said Gang Starr had broken up before I got there. Because their relationship had gone south before I even met Guru. They were already in that mode of separation. They had the one last album to do, and they both looked at it that way. I think the record company looked at it that way as well. And that was the vibe. There wasn't any animosity per se, as I never saw them arguing or yelling at each other. But at the same time, I was privy to certain things and ways that Guru felt about what went down, and how he interpreted these situations. I don't know too much about what Premier and his people were thinking, but some said they saw his drinking as a problem and the label knew that also. By 2003, the owners had already come out, and that's when I think things came to a head with the drinking. Once I told him he had to clean up, and he did towards the end of the making the project. The drinking had reached a point where it was destroying him. He got locked up, with a gun in the car and drunk driving. Actually, on that night he had called me drunk, early, like 5 or 6 o'clock. I'm asking him, "What are you doing, man? What's going on? I'm not with any of this." That was when the drinking started getting bad, because before that he wouldn't be drinking during the daytime. He wouldn't start drinking until we hit the clubs, and by the end of the night he was toasty, and usually had a chick that he was like dipping or rolling out with. Before that we shot the video for the owners, and I was in a cameo for skills. I was helping him with the writing, and he knew that there was a point that we talked about credits, but it didn't make sense at that point to even create that level of problem. It was going to be the last album he's going to be doing with Gang Starr. It wasn't going to go down well. I'm sure it would have been a lot of arguing and fighting if he pressed to put me in the credits of the records, the co-writing credits and co-production credit for the sessions I produced. So, we decided it was best not to do that. He always looked out for me, and I always looked out for him, so regarding money, that was never a thing between Guru and me. We were men, and we did business as men, and anything I did for him, he would do for me with no questions asked. That continued throughout our entire relationship. We always had a very good business relationship and a healthy personal friendship. I mean, we argued, and we fought. Even back then when we first got together, we had our arguments. But what friends or brothers don't argue and fight? It wasn't chronic. I don't believe that we ever argued or fought in public, but we had our times. Especially with the drinking times. Then we had our disagreements when it came to when he would drink too much and say or do something that I felt was out of line for somebody of his stature. Me and Guru could both handle ourselves as men. If the situation had to be, it had to be. Like we always said, peace don't mean pussy, so we kept it 100 and people would keep their mouths in a respectful way. If they weren't respectful, they might find my fist or my foot in it, and Guru respected that too. I remember one night outside a club on 23rd Street, this dude was harassing Guru. Some cat that was involved with Premier in some porno venture or something of that nature, at least to whatever argument based on that premise he was trying to make. Guru was telling him, "Yo, I have nothing to do with that. That's between you and that man." It started downstairs with Crumb, who got into an argument with somebody. It was G's at the party, so they posted up, and that got squashed. I was caught up with Crumb until we got outside and this dude starts coming at Guru. So, it was like one of those real crazy nights, when everybody is trying to set something off. Like something in the air. I was busy playing Peacemaker while Guru has got some stripper that came down from Maryland and they want to go to the hotel. Guru's car was in the lot closest to that club, so he was going to drive me to grab mine, so we could call it a night. Meanwhile, this guy just keeps talking funny to Guru, until I'm like, "Look," he says, "he don't know nothing about what you're talking about with Premier. It's got nothing to do with him. It is what it is, so good night." So, we start walking towards the lot to get the car, and this dude cut through the block somehow and came back and started talking again. I was like, this is it. Nobody wants to hear any more of this. We crossed the lot, and he turned around and said, "Oh, you niggas can bleed too." I turned like, what? This dude was like 6'3", but I walked up and dropped him flat. It was mad crowded on the street with the clubs letting out. It was around 3 o'clock in the morning. After I dropped this dude with one shot and he goes down, It got more real than real. This is the first time Guru saw me in action, and he was amped. Yo. People were on their horns. The cops were coming, so we had to dip out. We grabbed the whip. He dropped me off at my car, and Crumb Snatcher was there. He saw it all. The next day, me and Guru were talking, and he was like, "Gee, I didn't even know that's how you got down in situations like that." He called me from the studio, from D&D, and asked me to meet him down there. One of the friends of the guy that had to get it was there and started asking what happened to this dude and me. To this day, I don't understand what it was all about. Why this famous rapper would be involved with this flagrant dude or his hostile actions that would make me react that way. If it was something about gay porno or whatever, no one knows Guru to be involved in anything like that, but maybe it partly seeded the lies that would come later. Chapter 3 Mass Appeal. Around the 2003-2004 period, when Guru was finishing up with the Onerts, up until that point, we had been doing our thing in New York at the D&D studios and the underground club scene. Having a good time enjoying our new friendship. He had a house in Miami that he was getting ready to go down to in the winter of 2003. He invited me down, and I grabbed a ticket, and we flew to South Beach to his house right there on the water. Here was the first time we got away from everything and had a chance to talk and just relax. At that point, we had never really spent any time on the road or away. Up until then, we were just hanging out in New York for a couple of hours at the clubs, parties, studios, and now, we were away not vacationing but in a relaxing setting and the first time we had been on a road trip. So, we had the chance to talk about the future. We both knew that the Onerts was not going to be a big Gang Starr record. The feeling and energy weren't there, and the label commitment wasn't there. There wasn't a huge commitment on Guru's part, and I didn't work with Premier on any other albums, so I can only go by what Guru was saying, regarding where he was at making albums. And he didn't feel overly excited about it. Plus, Premier had a lot of other projects and things he was doing also. That is when I proposed 7 Grand Records. Why don't we start a new label, start fresh and close this last album on Emmy, I suggested. He was certain that they weren't going to look for anything more from them, at least that wasn't the idea. We threw up the framework of 7 Grand Records with Guru being the star of the label. I told him, "You're as good and as young as you feel you are." And we turned over a new leaf by refocusing on life with him being a father. His son was small at that time, and he wanted to be a good father to his son. He became my godson, and equally, when my son was born a few years after that, we were of the same mind, with me appointing Guru his godfather. We had goals and aspirations, and neither one of us could launch a successful label like we'd wanted before and make a noise as 7 Grand did. So that became the goal. We would be able to do all the things we hoped to do. And we saw 7 Grand as a multimedia company, not just a label, but a company that would encompass the new platform and model. Now keep in mind this is a time where labels were going to right and left. Going into 2005, once the label became operational, we were in the middle of a shitstorm regarding the music industry. Everybody was shutting down, streamlining and laying people off. They were shutting down offices, cutting budgets, and here we are launching a label in the middle of this. It was my first time being out in South Beach, and the thing that struck me as odd is that we were in the middle of winter, so we had a lot of people down there getting out of the cold from New York. It was shocking to me because the beach was like New York 2.0. You had more people on the beach from the Bronx and different parts of New York than in the city itself. It was like just leaving New York, to end up back home. We hit a couple of clubs there too. At one of the in spots, we ran into Busta Rhymes there. I had met him a few times before, here and there, but Guru knew him a bit more. I had heard that he was AG, but then I heard other things, so I wasn't certain. Then we had a chance to talk to the club and hang, and I could get clearer on where he was coming from and what type of dude he is. Meeting people was one of the coolest aspects of traveling with Guru. He liked Miami and had bought the house at a good time when the market was low. He ended up selling the house and making a good profit after I advised him on the outlook of the real estate market. He called it the perfect advice once the real estate market's bottom fell out right after that. Having bought low and sold high, the profit left him comfortable. He knew it was a time to let the party life out in South Beach go and focus on the business and matters at hand in New York, which included being a new father. Right after that, he left for Europe to do a tour on the owners. While he was on tour, my son was born. Guru got back on Christmas Day 2003, and we celebrated the birth of my son with one of our friends. Then we ended up celebrating again, bringing him home from the hospital because he was a preemie and he was in for a couple of weeks. Even then, the touring situation with Gang Starr, it wasn't up to par. He didn't enjoy it. They were using tour support, which for those who don't understand, there are two ways to tour. You can be a touring entity where you make money, and a lot of bands do just tour as an entity, and they're a money-making operation. Then you have other groups that tour and they're not able to be profitable, so they tour with the help of tour support from the label or the label distributors and different entities that support them. And that's a whole different business model and arrangement which didn't suit Guru, Gang Starr, or Jazzmatazz well at all. Moment of truth. Because it just rolled up debt and there was no upside. At the same time, Premier didn't want to do the tour, so he went out on it begrudgingly. Guru said it was a bad scene and he didn't come back feeling good about it at all. He didn't enjoy it. And of course, they had to do it to promote the album. He felt that he was the odd man out because there were people on the tour that were there because Premier put them there. In other words, the feeling for Guru was that they were there for Premier, but weren't for him. Even people who had years in the game with him were dudes that he felt were betraying him or going against him at that point. He just didn't feel like they were in his camp, and a lot of the excuses they made was that Guru used to be a drunk, but by now, Guru had stopped drinking altogether. It surprised him that there wasn't the support and back-patting that he thought he was going to receive because they had used the drinking against him. Like this so-called manager tells me out of nowhere, "Oh, Guru made millions of dollars, and he screwed it up drinking." Guru didn't permit him to tell me his business, and I certainly didn't ask. This he simply volunteered to me while we were downstairs in the bar. Guru went up to do a TV spot with Premier, and this dude was busy volunteering this information to me. When Guru came down, I brought it up again, to let Guru know what he had been speaking to me about. Whether he was just being reckless or not, he didn't take it back, and he didn't back down for it. He owned up to it. After we were out of his presence, I asked Guru, "What's this all about, man? Why was this dude telling me your business without you okaying this?" To me, that's unacceptable behavior. I would never speak another man's business without that man telling me it's okay, and that's on a business level. But even on a friendship level, I would never do anything like that. That's not according to the G ethic, the G code. That's when Guru explained that these dudes were flagrant and weren't showing him the respect that he was due. He said the truth was that while he was drinking, these managers and lawyers were dipping on his cake, and this dude was just a stooge for one of these managers. I've seen bank records and statements that certainly didn't add up to the money Guru was getting. He had a crooked accountant in there too. When we started talking about getting $7 grand together, we were talking about getting rid of these people and finding all new managers, lawyers, and accountants. He argued to keep this one guy on though, and he turned out to be the worst cat I ever dealt with. Eventually Guru saw him in a whole new light once he wasn't drinking. This guy booked us a tour, and the agent was some low-life thief that was telling us one set of numbers we were supposed to be making off the tour, and then we came back to find the numbers didn't add up. I started questioning this dude about what was going on, and he tried to take it straight, as opposed to answering my questions about the money. I explained I was trying to do business, being that I'm a businessman. But on the other hand, if you want to go there, I've got goons and gorillas too. My dogs walk, trust me. I told Guru, we can't be around dudes like these. We're not going to go anywhere like this. We were doing a record deal, and we brought him in on our record deal too. We went out on tour, and when we came back, this same manager was telling tales up at the record company. Same thing he was doing with me, telling me crap in the bar about Guru that wasn't true about all his millions being lost. Not due to drinking, because of thieves in the temple. He fed this to the record company we were dealing with, and the distributors, so when we came back, they were looking at us sideways. I'm saying, hold on. Wait a minute. Y'all were one way when we left. I come back and you're another way. I had to grab one of the guys I know on the inside and pull him to the side and ask, what's this new attitude up here? He explained that this dude was telling everyone about Guru's past. I'd had it. Guru, you got to get rid of this dude, man. He's gotta go. He was telling them that Guru messed up all his money and that he was a drunk, disrespectful, and abusive to people that were trying to help him. That Guru was the worst ever, and that wasn't my experience with him. Guru, when he drank, more hurt himself than anybody else. Even though, at worst, he wouldn't bite his tongue. His personality was that most people that met him liked him. When he drank, and the reason why those dudes and some people didn't like him, is when the truth would come out, it might be hard. He would come out with another side, which was not one that they could feel comfortable with. That side would say, I know what you're doing, I know who you are, I know what kind of devilish individuals you are and what type shit you be up to. Therefore, the last dude we had to get rid of from our business was that low-life so-called manager character. There was nobody else connected to us, and that's when we went forward with the 7 Grand Records launch. I had to watch the people around him who tried to enable his drinking too. Some managers/lawyers/promoters have a vested interest in keeping their stars hooked on something, booze, chicks, drugs, whatever. Because one night when I was cleaning Guru up off alcohol, I was sitting there in the bar eyeballing this lawyer guy on Guru's team, and next thing I know, he's trying to slide Guru a drink. I walked over with, didn't I tell you that he stopped drinking? What is wrong with you? You of all people should know everything that Guru lost, all the trouble he was in. Because every time Guru was in trouble before, he called this guy to come and bail him out. I mean literally, to bail him out of jail and or represent him in court actions or criminal cases. All these problems that he was having were because of the life that he was leading while drinking. He didn't need all that when he was cleaning up his life. That lawyer was happy that Guru was in often trouble and used his services to get him out. So I flipped on this dude and Guru was standing right there. You are calling yourself his friend, but you're going to try to hand him the bottle to crawl back into? What kind of low life are you, man? Unfortunately, these were the people that Guru called friends before me. So yeah, he had to open his eyes. Once he was sober, and after we'd started 7 Grand, he remembered these incidents before his sobriety that opened the door to swindlers, and he realized how vulnerable he was. For example, he told me about one incident that left him completely out there, and none of these industry cats that were supposed to respect him helped. It made him bitter, and maybe that is where some of his hard talk when he drank came from as well. One specific incident happened when he went to one of those Hollywood parties. Now this ties into what is spreading on the internet and YouTube nowadays, that quite a few of these gatherings go into some off-the-wall, bizarre antics. I don't even have to post links. The internet is stuffed with Illuminati and devilish talk around these evil entities and wicked parties, and if you've ever watched one, you can imagine what Guru felt when he ended up in what he described simply as some freaked off shit. Guru described the night where he went to this party with Premier and things started getting funny, and not funny, haha. He said somebody put something in his drink or the drinks were spiked anyway, and he was messed up. Not a feeling he associated with drinking, even at his worst, so it had to be some extra drug. He says he was not so bad where he didn't know what was going on, but worse than he should have been. And what he was seeing wasn't cool on any level. Guru often said he didn't deal with freaky or homosexual situations. Which is why it's crazy somebody would even say that about him or me, because we didn't roll that way at all. That was not how we got down, and matter of fact, we didn't go around or associate in ciphers that did. If we went to a party and we got there, and it was a certain type of night or a certain type of atmosphere, we'd fold it up. Even if we were where things turned a certain kind of way, we'd leave. Since we weren't ones to mess up somebody else's good time. At this Hollywood party, things were getting freaky and uncomfortable from Guru's point of view, and he said he wilded out big time. He flipped out on these cats until they called the cops on him. Guru said he jetted out of the party and was out in Beverly Hills or somewhere incoherent. When one of the G's rolled by coincidentally, and we didn't believe in coincidences, and saw Guru disheveled out in the street, and he was like, "What's going on, G?" Guru said, they tried to grab him and so on, so the G told him to get in the car, and he looked after him until he was sorted out. So that was a whole other thing that stuck out in Guru's head. This went down, and there was no assistance coming towards him from nobody else there during this situation. Nobody tried to just get him out of there and get him in the car or a cab. It was instead turned into a whole other situation, which he never felt good about. There were a lot of things that went on behind the scenes that had Guru very uncomfortable with most of those dudes, including Premier. There was no assistance that came from him or anybody else that was at the party. Those other record company people and managers that were at the situation, as far as Guru was concerned, they called the cops on him, and he didn't do anything but run since he just wasn't down with it. He didn't know what all that was going to lead to. Once he broke it off with Premier, it was a clean break in Guru's mind, but once the last record contractually wasn't holding them together, once the owner's record was done, Emmy dropped them both. Everything was done after that album. There were no more Gang Starr albums coming. No more Jazzmatazz records coming. Their relationship was over, which was what Guru had heard was going to be the case. Once their last tour to Australia went down, and it was the same as in Germany and Europe, where Guru felt he was the outsider on his own tour, he went and just stayed away from people. They would do the show, and afterward, Guru went off with the people he met down there and hung out. He called me one day from Australia, and he and this guy he grew up with in Boston were going at it. This guy was yelling and screaming at Guru, and Guru was telling him, "I ain't down. Like, just leave me alone. I'm doing my own thing." The guy is hollering back at Guru, so I tell him, "Gee, just chill. Hold your head. Get back here to the States, and you don't have to be bothered with this no more." This negative tour ended badly, even tainting future ones to a small extent, because when Guru and I went back out there ourselves afterward, I was told promoters had to smooth over old business that went down prior to even get that tour together. It had to be presented to them that Guru was a new man. This was a whole new situation. The person who took our tour later took a gamble and brought Guru out there anyway. It was highly successful, and he said we were some of the nicest guys he ever worked with ever. That Guru was a total pleasure and indeed a new individual. Since I already had a recording studio in Rockland, we decided we would launch with $7,000 and start working on the first album there, which was Guru version 7.0, The Street Scriptures. Take this however you like, but it's the truth. I started all this versioning of projects, the 1.0, the 2.0, etc. labeling you now see used in popular movies/TV shows and so on. I was the first to use this computer language for anything outside of computers, like in this case an album. Notice I did version 7.0, I started at 7, not at 1, 2, 3, the way you see it in Jackass, and they used it everywhere. Everywhere you look there is some example out there. We put out first the Street Scriptures in 2005. Right after that album was released, Martin Lawrence brings out the movie, Welcome Home, Roscoe Jenkins, Your Life is Calling. Guru said after watching it that it was like him, a new man. And that was the theme of our album, 7.0, The Street Scriptures. In the movie, Martin says, I'm Roscoe Jenkins. Version 7.0 in the context of, I'm brand new again. I knew it then. I agreed and told him this is what it feels like when you do something and it changes the world. After that, it was everywhere. Still is today. I drew up the concept for the album right at the beginning and Guru loved it. The thing that frustrated him at EMI and the different record labels he was at, was he always felt that he had to deal with too many different people. From A&R, and marketing to managers, etc. there was always a different opinion. And they changed labels a few times, compounding the confusion and hassle. There were often different decisions that were being made that he wasn't privy to, and a lot of those frustrations could be solved with $7,000, where we didn't have to depend on so many people. Not if we were going to do this independently, and be successful. We developed a work ethic that was insane and stayed in the studio. Whenever we weren't hanging out, we were there. If we weren't taking care of our young G's, we were recording or producing songs. The creative process for Guru became cathartic because what I said to him was that we were not going to go in there and try to do what's already been done. I can't tell you how many beat reels he got from producers and DJs trying to make imitation Premiere tracks. This didn't happen so much with Jazzmatazz. He didn't get too many submissions on that, but he couldn't count how many beat CDs and demo CDs he had from producers making fake Premiere beats. The tour heavily showcased Premiere's sound. As the tours were concerned, the music was being played live and being musically produced and interpolated for that purpose. As far as studio work, my production style was naturally opposite of Premiere's, and Guru found it fascinating. My approach to producing the music was hand in hand with the concept of the records. Once we started to match the vocals and the lyrics to the music, it became art. And almost cinematic as far as in our videos, which I directed. I wanted that kind of sophisticated production and different types of sounds. As you listen to a Solar album or all our albums, even though I produced them, the songs don't sound the same. And that was something I was very proud of. It was our first album that was critically acclaimed. The source said that I had the sound to break the radio matrix, which blew Guru's mind. But all the reviews for 7.0, The Street Scriptures, were positive. It was well received and sold vigorously. We then signed to an independent distribution company of size, with a German millionaire fronting the operation. They had a nice chunk of change to do the album. We controlled and owned the masters, which was important. This was something else that fit well with Guru's idea for the future. No real interference from the company. We played the album for them, of course, but there was no real major input. At the same time, we went over to another prominent record company and discussed doing an album over there. I said, we in here to sell a record. You want it, or you don't. You aren't changing any sounds, you aren't taking over nothing here. We weren't trying to get involved with that arrangement and subsequently signed with another label. The record was an indie hit, selling 50,000 units our first week, which for 2004 to 2005 that was a record. We were the #1 independent hip-hop record of that year, sales-wise, which to Guru and me was huge. We ended up with total sales for that year for close to 150,000 units worldwide. Then we started to see the bullshit that Guru was talking about. Oh, you know, if you do it independently, you do 50,000 units, 75,000 units, then the major labels will step in and drop this contract and promise to blow you up, to put some real mega bucks behind you. That didn't happen. We popped off 125K, close to 150K, but we didn't see this. At the same time, we're not hurting. It's good money, and it's our label, This is now the first successful record of the sort that we both had, and now we're all smiles about it. We did this first run with that whack pseudo manger from New Jersey that we had to stop dealing with before, so then we had to find a new manager and booking agent. We had to put some of those things in place ASAP and get rid of all the dead weight and foul individuals before we went out any further. After that, we proceeded to go out on tour. And that tour was what the new Solar took off from, so to speak. I was never really thinking about being in front of the cameras. That was never really my goal. Before, I just saw myself as a producer making tracks. I didn't think too much about the fame element at all. Europe was a good run. There we had about 10 shows, and a couple of big festivals, and this is all off the strength of the record that sold well and was well reviewed. This led the promoters in Europe to jump on it and on Guru, offering him a star treatment most of the way. When we got to Austria, we had chefs that offered to make the band and us a meal, which according to Guru is customary. After touring for some period, I too realized it's not out of the ordinary that they would take you out to dinner or have a chef or somebody prepare dinner for you. At that time, Guru and I ate meat, so there was chicken cooked in its own sauce or something, and everybody had the same thing but got their plates individually. Guru went out, did the show, and we all kicked it afterward before we prepared to take an early flight out. By the time we got back to the room, my stomach was in chaos. I freshened up a little and Guru came to get me about 3:30 to 4 o'clock in the morning. We headed to the airport to fly to London for the next show. "Yo G, you don't look so good," Guru said the minute he saw me. By then I knew I didn't feel right. "My stomach is out of here," I complained, and so he asked if I wanted to go to the hospital. "In Austria? Hell no. I'm just going to have to handle it," I said. On the trip, just from the hotel to the airport, it was getting worse. It was all I could do just to walk, since it felt like Mike Tyson was punching me in my stomach. That's how bad the pain was. I've never had food poisoning like that in my life. I'm like a zombie walking, and I couldn't carry my bags, or even present my passport hardly. I thought that once we got to London, I could get a handle on it. If I had to go to a hospital, I would much rather go in London than in Austria, where I don't speak the language. When we got to London, we went straight to the pharmacies. In Europe, the pharmacy is different because you don't have to have a prescription to get medicine. So, you just go and tell the pharmacist what's going on with you, and they give you medicine right there. Not like here in the States where you need a doctor to give you a prescription. I told them I had food poisoning and what the symptoms were. I told him what type of person I was, that I didn't like to take medicines and antibiotics if I didn't have to. So, he said to take these high-potency zinc and C and some other stuff. Then we went to the fruit and vegetable market and got that and tea, and I went on a fruit and vegetable fast with the vitamins. It cleared out in about a day or two. Meanwhile, while the cat's away, the mice will play. The tour manager was running around chasing chicks and acting like a nut. We did the show in London, and this dude was steady carrying on while I'm not feeling all that great, and Guru is tight about it, because I'm not feeling good. Like any brother, he's looking after me, making sure I'm cool. The limo was supposed to come around to pick us all up to go back to the hotel, but this dude went and took the limo somewhere else to grab some women. He was about to take it and cut out and leave us there at the venue until I got wind of this. I was tired. I want to go back to the hotel and rest and try to continue to heal for the rest of this tour. I swung to the other side of the venue where he's got the limo with these chicks. I roll up with, "What are you doing, man? How the hell are you going to leave the Starr and the rest of us?" Since he didn't have a good answer, I told him, "Get them out the car. If you want to take them to the hotel, call a cab." By the time we got in the limo, and we go back to the hotel, I was looking at this dude sideways. I was thinking, you're the tour manager, your job is to keep everything together. So, now I'm the tour manager. I'm the babysitter that's got to take care of this. But this guy had the money, so on one of those tours, we insisted some go to the accountant and booking agency. With some of these runs, we had to pick up cash. The next day, we had the day off, which was good. I was in the hallway waiting for the elevator, and I saw two chicks running down the stairs laughing and giggling. I didn't think much about it because I was standing there waiting for the elevator. Who do I see come running down a minute behind, chasing them? This tour manager. I don't know what happened. Did they rob him for money or were they playing games? Either way, it didn't look normal to me. It's not what I'm looking for in a tour manager, so I talked to Guru about it. It was too much money we were dealing with to be playing games with a lunatic. Guru said, "Yeah, listen, I didn't know this dude like that. He had done this one time before, but that was when Guru was drinking, and nothing was organized and put together the way things were with us. I told him we would go and do this other show and figure it out from there. That's when we went to do the Sonar Festival, which is a big event in Europe. Guru did a sound check on this big-ass empty stage. Other dudes doing sound checks had other group members, like two dudes and a hype man. So, Guru did the sound check and came out and said, "Gee, you know what? It's like I might need a hype man for this. It might be better." I thought about it and said, I can hype you. I know the material. It's no big deal." We went on stage, and when I tell you that it was magical, and I don't even like to use that term, but I use it because most people know what it means to them. But realistically, sophisticated, chemistry, mathematics, fate, and destiny, you name it, all came into play on that stage that night. We were the hit of that festival, and Guru looked at me afterward and confessed, "I never had this kind of symmetry before." Since we had created the music together, now we were going on stage and performing it that way. Two rappers are something he never had before. To discover it with this first show, we both found it was brilliant energy, everything about it. He told me afterward, "Solar, you got it, man." Even the leprous DJ that was with us agreed, and the promoters and everybody said that show was tremendous and that we had just killed it. The picture of Guru and me on stage speaks 1,000 words, before 20,000 people, where you see every hand in that house is waving. We were rocking the house ridiculously. That's my favorite picture, but the intricate piece to that is Guru hyping me in that picture. So, when you look at it, I'm on the front of that catwalk. I'm rapping, and Guru is behind me hyping. A lot of haters deride that picture because they say a picture speaks 1,000 words too. Still, this was the beginning of Guru and Solar's stage phenomena, our world-famous touring entity. Followed by going into Jazzmatazz and putting together bands, acting as musical director, which was our next phase. After that, the shady tour manager disappeared, and we didn't see him after the show. We didn't know where the hell he went. At this point, even Guru admitted we had to send that guy home. It was just not going to work, plus he had our money. I went to his room the next day and told him, "Look B, we putting you on the next flight, give me whatever money you got. Give it to me and you're out of here. You can talk about this back in New York with Guru or whatever. But you got to go, man." The rest of the tour was great from then on. Every show we performed together was brilliant. The Street Scriptures tour, with me and Guru, was enough to make waves internationally. Once we got back, we set out to find a new manager and booking agents. Which we did, with everything now rolling into the big time. We were starting to see the kind of money that Guru was getting from a major, but only on the advance side, not as profit. He had to pay a lot of that money back with interest. Now it was a whole different business model with him making money. Before this, when Guru was with those shady reps, he would tell people, "I'm driving a 99 beat-up Benz." Then from the time we launched 7 grand, it was every year a new Benz truck, top of the line. Everybody else is seeing him in all new jewelry with everything iced out. Now, we weren't ridiculous with it. Don't get me wrong that we were just out there blinging and balling. No, but at a certain status and certainly at his age and level of success, he should look good, drive something nice and live in a nice home. Why should he have, after all those years in the game, be in financial distress all the time? Jealousy. That's when it started to appear. And not only out in front where we could detect it but in the shadows. The bullshit re-entered after we finished the single, Hood Dreamin' off the Street Scriptures album. First thing, Lupe Fiasco and Jill Scott used the hook because the hook was a sample. They went and copped a Grammy for it too, never giving Guru 1 inch of remix credit or nothing, but now you know. Also, we were paying a nice piece of change to this record promoter, who seemed all in when he said the single was banging. The people in radio know its potential before they get a record. They send out test copies and get feedback plus use their listening assessments, and this guy had heard it himself and said, "Oh, this is going to do something." He started working the record, and the early feedback was good. I had people calling me saying, "Yeah, we just heard it on Hot 97, the #1 radio station in New York at that time, and it's poppin'." Cats were playing it out on the beat in LA and other major stations out west. It was starting to get a little momentum to it, and I'm thinking, okay, this is good money, right? By now we were handling things like executives, the music, tours, and videos, which I directed the one for Hood Dreamin' out in Hollywood. When you look at the video, it looks like a mixture of Sin City, The Green Hornet, and Kano. Which is the effect I wanted. That was when Sin City came out, and it was an amazing movie to me. I've always wanted to be a movie director, and the genre it inspired me so much, I used that video to give me a foot in that direction. It was a big budget video, with all the bells and whistles, trucks, lights, crews, extras. It was a pinch me moment for both of us. Guru and I had shot videos, but nothing like this. Even though I shot a big budget video with him for skills, it just didn't have that same energy. This was a whole different level from anything Guru had done before. This is all that he had dreamt of doing, but he was never able to. Maybe it was because he didn't have all the hands involved with the majors and them hiring people and putting people in place. Whereas we hired the producers, cinematographers, and the people who we wanted to be involved. Plus, the people who were involved believed in Guru and believed in me, the managers, the agents, and the publicist. And there was no alcohol involved. That upped the energy to a whole new level for Guru. Also during that time, Guru was dealing with his ex who he was breaking up, baby mama drama essentially. If Guru was anything but a player, it certainly wasn't evidenced by his great love of getting with women on the road. This dude traveled all around with condoms in his bag and girls' numbers all through his two-way. He was a ladies' man, and being on the road, that was a thing. We later had a meeting with our record promoter, and as soon as I looked at his face, I sensed something was up. I was hearing good things, like the record is doing good, so I was expecting to hear him confirm, yes, the record is taking off. Especially now that we're giving him more money to take this to the next level. I respected the way he handled business, so when he asked to talk to Guru on the side, I was all right, but Guru said, "It's cool, talk to Solar too," and so they brought me into the conversation. The record promoter explained, "Somebody is going around telling all these other DJs don't play your record." He retold of all these stories about Guru, such as him being disloyal and a traitor to Gang Starr. But how could he have been when he started the very name of it? The promoter was saying to me, "Solar, what can I do? I can't solve this problem. This is not a me problem. You guys pay me to work the records, and this one would have done better if it could keep going. But this is a problem that needs to be addressed." So, now, we come into this first situation where we're seeing these dudes just aren't going to let Guru go on like this. The jealousy, bad vibes, and their refusal to let Guru turn a new leaf all complicated matters for us to enjoy the success of the sudden mass appeal. Chapter 4. It's getting hectic. Once the Street Scriptures was released and critically acclaimed, it opened the door for touring and the success was rolling in. By now we have added a new element to our relationship with Solar performing on stage with Guru, and us now performing as a team equally in the studio. I had been writing with him, but now going into future endeavors, I was starting to produce my own solo project and write material with various other artists too. Things were bright, life felt good, success seemed possible. By the next album, Jazzmatazz Volume 4. Going in, we knew one of the reasons it was needed was because he felt Jazzmatazz Volume 3 hadn't landed. He had goals for that one, and for one reason or another with the record companies or the managers, he wasn't comfortable with the way the album ended up selling. Even how it was being presented to the public, because it was a great album. So, in preparing for Jazzmatazz Volume 4, we went back and revisited the 3 prior Jazzmatazz albums: Jazzmatazz Volume 1, an experimental fusion of hip-hop, 1993 Chrysalis, and Jazzmatazz Volume No. 2, The New Reality, 1995 Chrysalis/Emmy, and Guru's Jazzmatazz, Street Soul, 1999 Virgin. By doing so, we obviously had a chance to really discuss what his goals were in working with the introduction to the whole series. In a way, he subconsciously foresaw this as a series of albums. That was a part of his genius when it came to the Jazzmatazz series. He was like a pool player. Like any great pool player, while he's on ball 1, he's thinking about ball 8 and ball 9. Guru went all out and got Lonnie Liston, Roy Ayers, Ronnie Jordan, and all these fabulous jazz luminaries, including Dr. Donald Byrd, most notably because he was a mentor to him in the game. These pioneers opened the door for jazz and even for the hip-hop genre to be born, is how Guru saw it. It's a classic and groundbreaking album that any hip-hop fan would know and admire. Unfortunately, it was a much bigger record overseas and had a larger impact there than here in the States. Yet wasn't that the case with early black jazz musicians, poets, and writers as well, who got more love in Europe and overseas than they did in America? Yet also at that time, the jazz cats had turned sour on hip-hop because so many were sampling them. They weren't seeing money for it and felt like they were getting jacked. When Guru went to Dr. Donald Byrd, the first one to be approached for this album, and explained to him the situation, Dr. Byrd was with it. These albums Guru created bridged a generational gap between those who couldn't understand hip-hop music and its deepest followers. What he did was educated anyone who felt hip-hop was simply kids taking their generation's music, sampling it here and there and talking over top of it. What the Jazzmatazz series did was come from an entirely different angle. It made it more about the music and not the sample. So, if you love jazz, you were going to be absolutely amazed by what he did. In turn, if you loved hip-hop and knew nothing about jazz or vice versa, it was an introduction to something new and amazing that worked so beautifully together. Once Dr. Byrd got on board, he could open the door for other jazz artists to do Jazzmatazz. He went and smoothed their feathers. When Guru talked about Byrd and that album, he stayed animated, proud, and excited, as he should have been. And the album did what it was supposed to do, yet I think it could have done more. When I looked back at the catalog, at Jazzmatazz Volume 2 and 3, he certainly had hits and tracks that could have been as big as Diggable Planet's Cool Like Dad or US3's hit Cantaloupe. Emmy pulled back on the reins of the promotion on the Jazzmatazz series as far as radio was concerned, and to some degree with Gang Starr too. Yet there was more radio-friendly material in the Jazzmatazz series than there was in the Gang Starr series. One might argue the other way, that Wu-Tang Clan had big radio records and other underground sounds got major radio play. When examined from that aspect, they pulled back on the reins with Gang Starr too, with the fact that they never had a big radio release. It kind of begs that question as to what was going on with all these different record deals at Emmy and their subsidiaries, like Chrysalis, that they didn't get on top of that and make sure there was a radio record coming out of it. I remember when we were working on the Owners, we were going back and forth with A&R about picking a radio single, and a lot of criticism was being thrown towards Premier in that he wasn't producing radio-ready records. That was bleeding through to some of the interviews